Peach Pundit, the podcast, is a conversation filled with the personal opinions of the people who are participating. Any view or opinion expressed belongs only to the person who expressed it and not with anyone with whom that person is professionally affiliated. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another episode of Peach Pundit, the podcast. My name is Scott Turner, joined by the effervescent Buzz Brockway. Buzz, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I was telling you before when I first logged on, I think today and tomorrow are the greatest days in sports. It's the first round of the NCAA tournament. So many games going on, so many buzzer beaters, so many upsets. It's super exciting, and I don't know, I love it.
Soon to be Buzz is in the chat. He's one of our Patreons in there. I'm guessing that's John, who says he was in time for the pre-show, but no pre-show. You were late because there was a pre-show. We were talking about.
We were
talking about how we would handle the tort reform debate if we were still in the legislature, which will be one of our topics.
I don't know. I'm not going to say anything right now.
Yeah, I mean, stay tuned because we're going to probably repeat that. It was good enough to make the show. But man, it's been a heck of a week, Buzz. We had, I had mock arguments for our Supreme Court thing on Monday. We had a big hearing for our organization on Tuesday, and we were successful in our efforts there. And then yesterday, we actually had our Supreme Court hearing, which we'll talk about here coming up on the show. So you're now listening to Peach Pundit, the podcast, which is really the only podcast in Georgia focused on Georgia politics that pulls the curtain back so that you, the listener, can understand how the sausage is made in its ugly, disgusting, and beautiful manner. So welcome in. Thank you for listening. Hang around. We got a lot to talk about. Before we do, let's bring some words from our Patreons.
Peach Pundit has an anonymous Patreon who would like to invite you to learn more about the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. No one should fight Alzheimer's alone. With your help, no one will. Learn more on their website, alz.org.
Attention, Georgia. Are you concerned about excessive government regulations impacting our business and economy? The REINS Act, spelled R-E-I-N-S, aims to enhance transparency and accountability by requiring legislative approval for costly new state agency rules. This ensures that Georgians have a stronger voice in the regulatory process. Join the movement to protect our state's prosperity by visiting GeorgiaReins.com. Again, that's spelled R-E-I-N-S, GeorgiaReins.com, to learn more today and take action. This message is brought to us by our friends at Americans for Prosperity, who are supporting the REINS Act. You can learn more about them at GeorgiaReins.com. If you'd like to be a Patreon, you can head on over to patreon.com/peachpundit. Sign up for one of our tiers today, and you can help make this thing go. We'll add you to the list of people who rock. So, Buzz, for the show, we were kind of chatting.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about the governor's tort reform bill, which passed today.
Yes.
By the narrowest of margins, 91 yes votes. Among those who voted no were 8 Republicans, who I'm not going to name here, but I will name the 3 Democrats that without them voting yes, this bill would not have passed. That's Representatives Michelle Awe, Mac Jackson, and Carl Gilliard.
Yeah.
Of those 3, Mac Jackson and Carl Gilliard have a track record, well-established track record of sort of bucking their party at times and voting more conservatively than the rest of their caucus. Michelle Awe does not have that reputation.
Yes. That's an interesting vote by her, right?
Yeah.
I mean, well, she's a medical professional, right? I forget. She's a doctor. She's a doctor, right?
I do think she's a doctor, yes.
Full-blown doctor. They would be on the opposite sides of the lawyers.
Well, yeah, it's all about, I guess, maximizing payouts. But the bill did a lot of things. Now,
Yeah.
the bill that was voted on in the House today was certainly stripped of certain things. If you and I wrote a post where I attempted in my non-lawyer brain to convert the legalese in the bill section by section into something a layman could read and understand what was actually happening. So that is a very lengthy post. It's like 5,000 plus words. So if you're interested, if you're a nerd, you really want to dive into the details and way beyond headlines, get into what the bill actually does as it passed the House, go take a look at Peach Pundit, the blog. All the details are there. There are 8 substantive sections of the bill. The first is dealing with arguing monetary value of pain and suffering. The second section deals with timing of defendants' answers for motions for clarity and discovery. So all the changes are outlined from what it was in current code to what is being changed to under this version of the bill. Section 3 changes to the timeline for voluntary dismissal of lawsuits. This is the situation where if you get sued and you go through this really lengthy process, people were waiting to the last second to withdraw their case, causing you nothing more than a bunch of burden. And if it gets withdrawn before the case goes to trial, then you're just on the hook for all those expenses. You don't have a mechanism to get it back. So,
and that could be, I mean, that's important because you can have if you have a disparity of resources, right? If you're on one side and you don't have a lot of money, just the length of time, the grinding you down,
yes,
can bankrupt you or force you to accept a settlement that's heavily tilted toward the other side, right?
Yeah,
so
that's the lawfare aspect of this, right? So many people get sued in hopes that people just settle out of court. And this bill kind of takes aim at that as one of its policy objectives. Section 4, it limits recovery of attorney's fees, court costs, and litigation expenses. Specifically, like there's this aspect of double billing that some lawyers who are considered bad actors, even by good lawyers, the people who are doing this are trash. And they're double billing for the same legal work because they're saying it applies to different code sections. So they eliminate that. There's an admissibility of contingency fee agreements. So if you're under a contingency fee, you would have to declare that. So and that's how most of our personal injury attorneys take their cases. No money up front. We'll take a portion of what you get from the case. Section 5 is the seatbelt clause. I don't know why this is controversial at all. Like, as a standalone bill, this should pass unanimously in both chambers, I would think.
Yeah, there've been huge fights over it in previous years.
I don't understand. Do you have any insight as to why it's been, so let me just set up real quick.
Yeah.
Right now, and under current law, if you get into an accident and you're not using your seatbelt, the jury is not allowed to hear that you weren't wearing your seatbelt, which could have caused you to sustain greater injuries, right?
Right.
So this law says that's now admissible in court. So do you have some insight in the history of some of why that might be?
The only thing I can say is I remember a conversation with an attorney who was a legislator at the time, like the first time this came up. I think we were both still serving, and it was over in the Senate, and it never got any traction. But the thinking was it's prejudicial information. That the way the jury would react to that kind of information is, well, there's that's all on the driver's fault. The person who wasn't wearing the seatbelt, and they would get no damages, even though they're certainly deserving of some, depending on if the other party's guilty. So I don't know. It was a head scratcher to me.
Yeah.
But
who's not wearing their seatbelt these days? Right? It's 2025.
Some, right?
I remember when we passed the
police still write tickets for this stuff. So
yeah, I remember growing up as a kid, not always wearing my seatbelt, right? But we also I would lay out in the back seat taking naps if it was a long road trip or whatever. It's not something you do anymore, obviously, because people could die, right? So,
Yeah.
but I remember like in America in like the mid 80s when we started passing these laws to require seatbelts. My mom and I actually like 1986. I remember this road trip really well because we went up all the way up the East Coast. We did a road trip up to DC. We went up to New York. Couldn't go see the Statue of Liberty, which broke my heart because it was behind scaffolding. It was being
Yeah.
refurbed at the time. And we went up to Boston. And as we went into each state had different laws. And I remember like getting on the New Jersey Turnpike and it said the law in New Jersey is you must wear your seatbelt.
Right.
As you crossed over from one state to the other, they were telling you, you know, the
Yeah. And
state
as a
laws are
kid, you're
different.
like, oh, darn, I got to buckle up now.
Yeah. And as the 10-year-old Scott was like, this sucks. Right. So, but it's 2025 now. That was a really long time ago. Who's not wearing their seatbelt? Like, come on, wear your seatbelt, people.
You still see those signs in certain jurisdictions when you drive into town, you know, number of people wearing seatbelt, you know, 96%. Or,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
those
so there
never
are people who
change.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You head up to Gainesville, like 316, you head up
Yeah.
that way. There's always a sign. It's like, 96% safety record for this month. And
Yeah.
you drive by it 6 months later. It's 90. You drive by 3 years later. It's the
Hey,
same exact number. They never change it.
They're consistent. People are
Yeah.
consistent up there.
Yeah. It's always 96%. Section 6 adds new provisions for negligent security lawsuits. This is sort of the primacy liability aspect. So if a claim against property owners, managers, security providers, or injuries caused by failing to protect against foreseeable criminal acts by third parties is in here. It establishes new requirements to establish liability here. Like the owner has to have some sort of foreseeable ability to foresee harm happening as a result of their action or inaction.
Mhm.
The injury has to was a reasonably foreseeable result of a criminal's actions and yada yada. So that's what that section deals with. Again, lots of detail in the blog post. I'm not going to bore you all with it, but it's briefly go over the different sections. Section 7, new rules for recovering medical and healthcare expenses in injury lawsuits. This is to make sure that you're getting back what you actually were paid out and you're not dealing with inflated medical bills that may not have actually been charged to you as the patient in that case. And Section 8 is a new option for splitting, bifurcation. And I think this is what really has gotten the trial attorneys up in arms. Essentially, the bifurcation would require the plaintiff to establish that who they are suing is actually liable. So they have to establish liability before talking about the facts of the case. And that bifurcation creates a barrier before the story can be told in front of a jury to have a sympathetic victim of an injury in this case.
Yeah.
Where the jury may be inclined to say, okay, well, maybe that person was liable, but somebody needs to pay. And so we're making sure, well, the bill I think is trying to make sure that the right person is actually going to be responsible for paying out.
Yeah. Because, sometimes you see, I'm guessing this would address this. Somebody gets sued because they may not really be responsible, but they have deep pockets. And so you're trying to kind of bank shot the proof into, oh yeah, those guys really are responsible because they happen to have deep pockets to help my client. So,
yep. Section 9, we're on Section 9, the effective date. Some of it is effective immediately upon. Some of it has like some retroactive aspects to it. Some of them are, and it's also clarifying any incidents, injuries, or claims that occurred before the law takes place remain in effect governed by the previous laws. So if the governor, if they pass this out of the Senate tomorrow, because the Senate has to agree to the changes, if they do, and the governor signs it tomorrow, which is possible, I don't know that it's likely, but the moment he signs it, any claim that's already been made at that point is governed by the law as it is today, rather than after this one passes.
Well, and that's only fair. I mean, you can't change the law in the middle of now. All right, now the rumor I heard, Scott, the whole reason the advocates were pushing the House so hard to make changes, any changes, they want the Senate to be forced to vote one more time, hoping they can kill it over there.
I don't know,
because they've got to agree to this, right?
They do have to agree, but you had, well, that is a good point.
So if it starts ping ponging back, you had a, the governor had to issue some threats to get it out of the Senate, right?
Well, and they also had to amend it in the Senate.
Yes,
right.
And now
He had said no
he's
amendments.
got no margin in the House,
right.
So they don't want it ping ponging back and forth.
Right. So let me pull it up real fast. I'm going to pull up the past versions as passed the Senate. This bill was 18 pages, and the current version 19 pages. So there've been some changes.
Yeah. Senate's got to vote again.
So yeah, the Senate has to vote again.
The pressure is going to mount,
and it'll be interesting to see. It will be worth watching. See what the Senate does.
Now, look, I assume that Senator Kennedy, the author of the bill, and the governor, they've been involved at every step, so they're well aware of these changes. I'm assuming that means they've signed off on them. So the only question then is, for Kennedy and the governor, is explain these changes to the Senate and remind them that they're voting yes. So
right, that's exactly right. So it'll be interesting to watch. But one of the things that happened during the debate I thought was pretty funny. Representative Stacey Evans, who is a trial attorney,
yes,
was very passionately opposed to the bill.
A rather successful one in times past.
Yeah. She went to the well, and during her speech, she mentioned this thing. She said that she has a hype song that she listens to. She has a couple of hype songs. And one of them she mentioned specifically was Never Scared, which features Killer Mike, Bone Crusher, old school Atlanta hip hop. And it got me wondering, does Buzz Brockway have a hype song? Because I know Pi does. He's all musical. All the music you hear is on Peach Pundit is by Jason Pi. But it got me wondering, Buzz, do you have a hype song?
I do. I do. It's kind of old school. A band called POD. You might remember them. They had some hits back in the 90s, and they had one called Boom. So boom! Here comes the boom. Ready or not, here come the boys from the South. And it's a fun song. It's kind of they're really cool band, kind of heavy metal and hip hop mix.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
And they're from San Diego, so the South doesn't mean Atlanta. It's from San Diego. That's Southtown in their mind. So,
at the risk of getting flagged for copyright infringement, I'll only play a couple seconds of some of these things. But I actually have a playlist on Spotify called "Get Going."
I'll link to that, so folks will remember it.
Yeah, my playlist on Spotify is called "Get Going," and probably my go-to right now is "Might As Well Be Me" by the Brothers Osborne.
Okay,
it's like somebody's got to do it, and it might as well be me. So the jukebox won't rock unless there's a quarter down in it. The liquor up on the shelf ain't going to drink itself. Might as well be me.
Huh?
Right. Yeah, it might as well be me. But this is another one. I don't know. This is the Struts. Could have been me.
It's an untold story.
Don't want to live as an untold story, bro. I can't hear you, and I don't fear you.
There was a time when our friend Michael Caldwell, I don't know if he considered a hype song, but every morning he was listening to Taylor Swift "Shake It Off," and that was
Mayor Caldwell has terrible taste in music. He has a stand-up cardboard cutout of Taylor Swift in the break room at his office place. He's a notorious Swiftie.
But I can sort of see "Shake It Off." When you're in the legislature, you're getting grief all the time. You just shake it off.
Yeah, but that playlist for me has it has My Shot from Hamilton. Not throwing away my shot.
That's right.
I'm young, scrappy, hungry, just like my country, and I'm not throwing away my shot. I just thought it was fascinating. It's an interesting thing. But
now I did have I guess I had a kind of a ritual. I watched 2 movies the weekend before the session. I watched Braveheart.
Oh yes,
and then
me too.
And then I watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Oh,
just to kind of center me. Before I'm probably gonna lose and be tortured to death, but I got to stand for the right thing. So
the Saturday before every legislative session, this was my a big bag of popcorn, a 6-pack of Cokes, and Braveheart, Gladiator, and
Oh,
Last of the Mohicans.
yeah, there you go.
It was those three. Before every legislative session, the Saturday before it would start, all day long, movie marathon at the Turner household, and not necessarily in the same order every year. But it would get me pumped up. I'd go into the legislative session whistling the theme to Braveheart, especially
Yes.
on that first floor hallway between the entrance from CLOB to the elevators.
Right.
Perfect place. Yeah. So yeah, Last of the Mohicans soundtrack is incredible.
Yes, it's a good soundtrack. Braveheart's one of the best soundtracks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely is. Hey, you had a piece on Peach Pundit that was kind of interesting this week about air
Yeah.
taxis. What the are we living in the age of Jetsons? Are we finally getting our flying
We're
cars?
close. We're close.
Tell me more.
So, I've sort of been following this industry for a while. I mean, I have no interest. I own a tiny amount of stock in two of these companies, but I got our newsletter over the weekend from Representative Todd Jones, who has dropped a bill, and then the post I referenced the bill that gives the oversight of allowing the construction of what they call vertiports, and I'll explain all this in a minute. They're just kind of glorified helicopter pads, okay? But the vertiport would be, I guess, added to that would be a station, a terminal, so to speak, sort of like an airline terminal where you purchase your tickets and you walk out onto the pad and hop in one of these little helicopters. But what's fascinating about them is what's catching fire now is they're called EVTOLs. Okay,
They need a better name.
Yes, they need a better name. Air taxis sounds a lot better, but what's unique about them is they're electric. Okay, and that's important, as you'll see in a minute. So EVTOL stands for Electric Vehicle Takeoff and Landing. All right, and there's two principal companies that are on the cutting edge of this, Joby Aviation and Archer Aviation. So essentially, Todd Jones' bill puts under the authority of the Department of Transportation the oversight of the building of these vertiports, where these companies can create little places where you can come and catch a short trip. Why people are excited about them, because if it's electric, flying through downtowns and you don't make a lot of noise. So it's not creating this, you don't have the fight that you have over, I remember, 20 years ago, there was a huge fight here in Gwinnett County. People wanted to convert Briscoe Field, just down the street from me, into a second Atlanta airport where commuter type airplane flights would take place. We'd have smaller planes, but smaller planes being DC-9s and 727s, still pretty big aircraft coming in and out.
Lots of noise.
Lots of noise. These electric helicopters, so to speak, much quieter. So they're not going to bother people. They're buzzing around Atlanta. So they're meant to make short trips. Now, Archer Aviation has heavily invested relationship with United Airlines. Joby has a partnership with Delta. So imagine the use for this. You fly into Hartsfield, you get off your plane, you walk out, you catch one of these air taxis up to the northern suburbs or wherever you got to go. You're not sitting in traffic. You don't have to sit in traffic for an hour and a half. You take a 10, 15-minute flight in one of these EVTOLs, and there you are. Or a similar thing, say you need to get to the airport. So I would just ride down to Briscoe Field. I'd hop on one, carry me down to Hartsfield, hop off and run in and catch my flight. So, I mean, and I think what these folks are envisioning is this sort of traffic all over a metro area. South Korea, for example, is way ahead of us. There'll probably be flights taking place in Seoul later this year.
So are these drones, or are they piloted by people?
They're piloted by people. Of course, they're envisioning that they don't have to be. Just like driverless cars, you could have driverless, driverless air taxis. So I think that's coming, but probably, it's one thing to hop in a driverless car, and I saw my first Waymo in Atlanta yesterday, by the way.
Did you really?
But there was a guy driving it. So,
Oh,
but yeah, I think it's probably a whole other leap of faith for somebody to fly unattended. So, driverless flying.
I don't know. I think they're probably equal in my book. I'm gonna have a really hard time getting into the backseat of a Waymo. I've seen enough videos and TikToks and reels at this point of the Waymo cars driving in circles in parking lots because they can't figure out how to get out.
Wait till I think what's happening in Atlanta with Waymo is they're mapping the area, so they're driving these things around to show them all the weird, bizarre roads that we have. But anyway, I think
it's just not permanent though. There's cones going up and down all the time.
Yes. Right.
It has to have some sort of smart programming to adapt to changing.
Yeah. Now, one more thing about these EVTOLs and Todd Jones' bill, why it's timely. Archer Aviation just in December got the certificate of occupancy on a 400,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Covington. They have a big order waiting from United to make these things, and I had a video in the post of a test run of one of their aircraft. So
is it like a quadcopter or
six propeller. Well, let me look. I think it's either 6 or 8 propellers. And what's cool about it, what's different than drones is then they, the front propellers then bend down and for horizontal flight. So it lifts it up, the front ones tilt, and off you go.
So you're sitting comfortably as if you're riding down the road in a car. You're not tilted forward.
Right.
Interesting. I will not be an early adopter. And
I'd love to try one. I think it's pretty cool.
Let me know how it goes for you after your 15th ride. Okay, and we'll have another conversation.
But anyway, think about it. This, it's not going to be well. Joby also has a relationship with Uber, so I think Uber is thinking, hey, you hop on an Uber, and we'll carry you over to the vertiport where you can catch an Uber flight over to Hartsfield or wherever you need to go. Put these vertipads on top of tall buildings in Atlanta or all over the place, So think, it's not it's just, to me, it's another option that can be part of getting around Atlanta where you're not stuck in traffic.
Yeah, every person that's in one of those
some appeal
is not in a car clogging up traffic.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we need everyone.
And of course, as I said, the electric aspect of it means they're very quiet.
Right.
Since we're conservatives can like electric vehicles now, because Elon's on our side, we can make these vehicles cool again. We can all like them.
Make electric vehicles great again.
Yeah, just keep Tesla out of it so that people aren't bombing it and painting swastikas on it and all that stuff.
My goodness, the peaceful, loving left in our country. It's a whole other story. Hey, listen, folks, we have a merch shop at peachpundit.com. So you've been asking for T-shirts, you've been asking for hats, you've been asking for somebody wanted a lunchbox. We don't have a lunchbox there, but we have other things. Go check it out. You get some stickers, fairly cheap. All the money goes back into creating the best possible content that we can for you. So check it out, Peach Pundit merch, and take another couple words real quick from some of our Patreons who want to tell you some really cool stuff.
Peach Pundit has an anonymous Patreon who would like to invite you to learn more about the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. No one should fight Alzheimer's alone. With your help, no one will. Learn more on their website, alz.org.
Golden Retriever Rescue of Atlanta, GRRA, is an all-volunteer, tax-deductible charitable organization. They are dedicated to providing veterinary care, comprehensive evaluation, and foster and adoptive homes to Golden and Labrador retrievers who are abandoned, mistreated, neglected, or left in shelters throughout Georgia. We encourage you to visit their website grfra.com and help connect people and dogs that need each other in their lives. You truly can make this world a better place by helping find homes of gold for these golden-hearted pups.
All those messages are brought to you by our Patreons who sign up at patreon.com/Peach Pundit to support our podcast. You can join them for as little as $5 a month and help us be the only podcast in Georgia who pulls the curtain back to tell you the whole story. You're more informed. You as a listener, Peach Pundit, are way more informed than your average Georgian. Thank you for being with us. So, Buzz, yesterday, I got to do something that I didn't ever think I would, and I hope I never have to again. I sat in the very front row of watching the Georgia State Supreme Court pick apart attorneys for both sides in the EVA versus the state of Georgia case, the Eternal Vigilance Action, which is the case that I brought on behalf of the organization I work in, and as well as myself and James Hall, who is a member of the Chatham County Election Board, trying to put a check on a runaway executive agency who had basically deemed themselves legislators and rewriting the law, and which is way beyond the scope of creating rules. Right. They were actually doing things that contradicted the law, very clearly did. And in some cases, they did so in a way that was potentially dangerous to the outcome. And it was pretty obvious to anybody that wasn't inside of the Georgia Republican Party that was the case. We had Republican sitting members of the Georgia legislature, as well as retired Republicans who joined us in that suit in filing amicus briefs. So it wasn't just us. There were lots of concerns on the conservative side about a runaway state agency. Yep. And it was fascinating because the state hired Brian Tyson, who is an excellent attorney, and all he did for almost 20 minutes is tell the court that we didn't have standing. He didn't really even argue the merits. The RNC had hired an attorney from North Carolina to come in and talk about the merits of the case, but he only got about 10 minutes. So 30 minutes from each side. And the vast majority of the time, the state was just saying, you have to dismiss this because Scot, James, and Eternal Vigilance Action don't have standing. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out. Yeah. I didn't like all the attorneys on our side thought it went really well for us. Me as a layman, I'm like, I don't know. I didn't know how to feel walking out of there. I certainly felt far more confident in front of the judge in Fulton County than I did yesterday. And the number one takeaway from me is I've never felt like I was the smartest person in the room, but yesterday, boy, howdy, was it proven to me. Those justices up there, they think about the law and the Constitution and how everything is layered in a way that I want to be like that. I want to learn what they have learned and how they apply their knowledge to interpreting the law and how it fits within the constitutional structure. Their nature of their questions is like, I've never even considered all this stuff. All this case law. They're throwing out cases like everybody knows what all these things mean. Me as the non-lawyer layman, I'm like, what is happening here? Like, I don't even half the time they're using cases that I've never read. I don't know what they're talking about. Right. Have no idea. And man, I'm glad I had a really good attorney. I'll just say that because he was on top of all of it. He had an answer every step of the way. Somebody said that the other side got asked way more harder questions than us. I kind of felt like it was 50-50. Who knows? I don't know what's going to happen. Michael, we ran into a momentary technical difficulty. The power in Lawrenceville decided to go out, and Buzz froze on the screen and went away. And we had to wait for the power to come back. But we're back now. We don't even remember what we were talking about. Something about the Supreme Court case and those people being way smarter than me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kudos to Jackson EMC, Johnny on the spot, and got it going again. So
yeah. Well, if that had been Holly Springs, Georgia, it would have been tomorrow.
Oh no.
Every time a butterfly farts, the power goes out in my neighborhood.
Oh no.
Just, the trees along the anyway. It's a whole story. We got a new mayor. I'm hoping the new mayor can crack some whips. So.
Fix it, Mayor. Yeah.
Buzz, we've been talking for quite a while about Dale Washburn's effort to ban speed zone cameras in the school zones
Yes.
and stuff. We've been preaching go Dale go. He's played some hardball at times this legislative session.
Mhm.
He has brought this to the forefront. And it's created so much momentum, so much really like a movement at this point that people are pretty fired up about this. He had an unprecedented 6 a.m. committee hearing in public safety in the Senate yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ouch. I mean, that is.
6
It means
a.m.
I would have had to leave Lawrenceville at 4:30, and maybe I would have got there on time.
Yeah. I mean, that was about the time I would get to the office when I was in the legislature.
Ugh.
But it was funny because the chairman of that subcommittee is Randy Robertson.
Right.
And Randy had both Alan Powell and Dale Washburn in at the same time. And seeing Alan Powell in there is like
dueling bills.
Well, not as dueling bills, but Alan is known for being more of a night guy, not an early morning guy. And they're like, aren't you glad you're here this early in the morning? And Alan Powell's like, no, I am not. No. He goes, I usually wake up right about now and I'm having a cup of coffee and my first cigar of the day. This is no.
At least he didn't say that, he normally wakes up normally goes to sleep about now. So.
Well, I think that's what he really meant if you read between the lines. But during the hearing, the Butts County Sheriff, which is one of the counties that Dale Washburn represents, came in, and we're going to link to the video. It's at the 2 hour and 10-minute mark of the hearing where Sheriff Long of Butts County comes in and he tells the story. He goes, I got visited by two people right away when this law was passed, well, I guess now 7 years ago. And they didn't tell me about safety stats. They didn't tell me how many kids' lives are saved, how many kids don't get run over, or how many kids do get run over without these things. The only thing they told me was in the first year, I'd make $1 to $2 million for my agency. That was the only thing that they cared about. It wasn't about safety. It was about the money, which is what Dale Washburn's been saying, right?
Right.
So neither bill was moved out of the subcommittee. The way it wrapped up at the 3 hour mark, Senator Robertson said, I'm going to issue a report to the chairman and whatever the chairman decides will happen after that. But 3 hours of hearings starting at 6 o'clock in the morning, you had citizens showing up to testify in favor of these bills. And, I know our Patreon and our one-time blogger on this issue, Ryan Purvis, is very passionate. Ban them, get rid of them.
Right.
Either one of them at this point is an improvement over what we have. And neither one of them, I think, are perfect because there may be a case for these things being useful, but they have to be fair and they have to follow due process.
Right. I mean, the two problems I hear or see, a lot of complaints about, and I mean, Eric Erickson is like on the case. So there's a lot of chatter on his show and more on his Facebook page and Twitter account. Lots of complaints of people saying I was ticketed when school's not in session, either off hours or
that happened to the sheriff.
Summertime. Yeah.
The sheriff got a ticket for a vehicle that he hasn't owned in more than 5 years. Gary Long. That happened to Sheriff Gary Long. Sheriff Gary Long's son got 2 tickets when his son wasn't anywhere near where the camera. Or no, the fact pattern was that it was at night when school was not in session.
Yeah. Right. So you're driving. You can be driving the actual speed limit, just not the school hour speed limit or the morning and evening. It's not even all day when the kids are there. It's morning and beginning of school and end of school when kids are on the move.
Right. And if you're
So
getting, I mean, there's a street here in Cherokee County. It's 45 miles an hour when school's not in session or when the flashing lights are not on.
yeah,
But then it drops to 15 while during the school zone hours or in the morning and the afternoon.
Yeah.
So if you go through a school zone at 45 miles an hour when it's 15, I mean,
that's a hefty fine there.
It would ordinarily be, for sure.
The other big complaint I have, and is, if normally, if you have some sort of traffic violation and you say, I want to contest this, you go and the officer who wrote you the ticket goes too. So the judge you have that right to face your accuser, right? In that case, it's a police officer.
Right.
And the judge can ask questions, and the judge is there to determine, was the officer right or are you right? And maybe you split the difference. All those sorts of things are in play. That's not possible here because it's a camera and it's a company somewhere else in the United States, and they're not showing up to be cross-examined by you if you decide to contest this. So
that continues. The whole thing with the Dale Washburn's effort, go Dale, go. We're still rooting for you.
Definitely.
Tell me about Senator Dolezal and the Promise Scholarship. You broke this.
Yeah. So, excuse me. As everybody knows, as listeners to this program know, Promise Scholarship passed last year. Greg Dolezal was the principal author of the bill, so he has a vested interest in this, no doubt about it. The governor, in his budget proposal, fully funded it at $141 million. Under the law, it's 1% of QBE. The House, in its wisdom, cut that to $45 million instead of $141 million. So Senator Dolezal has a letter, and last I saw, 30 Republican senators. I think there's only 32, right? Maybe 33. Excuse me. Signed onto the letter. The others were anticipated to sign. So probably by now, every Republican senator has signed on to it, and it would be delivered to Senator Tillery, the chairman of Senate Appropriations, saying, here's all the reasons why we should restore that funding and why it's important. Sorry. Couple public statements have been made by the lieutenant governor saying we're going to fully fund that. Obviously, Senator Dolezal. And I saw a quote in an article today, so if I'm wrong about this, forgive me, but Senator Tillery said we intend to fully fund this. So that's, Scott, you were talking last week about looming showdown between the House and the Senate over the budget. Well, this is going to be one of the battlefields, and it appears you have a united Republican caucus saying it needs to be $141 million as the governor proposed. So the governor, of course, has not weighed in. He often or rarely weighs in on the legislation as it's working its way through the process.
Yeah.
So
earlier this year, I had this experience where I was trying to talk with his legislative staff about different measures, and they're like, "Is it tort reform?" Oh, it's not? Okay.
So maybe now, now they've cleared a big hurdle. I think there's a whole lot of legislation. My observation, Scott, is there's a whole lot of things that the pipes are clogged down at the Capitol. The sludge is filling up and it's stuck. And what is going to unstick it is tort reform being sent to the governor's desk. So for the sake of every other piece of legislation flowing around the Capitol right now, Senate, just say yes and get that done and get it over to the governor's desk. Do it tomorrow.
Here's an issue that you and I have both been sort of passionate about, not sort of, but have been passionate about, is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act brought this year again by the ever passionate, relentless, tireless Ed Setzler.
Yep.
Who, a couple of days ago in a subcommittee hearing, one of the members of the subcommittee said that they don't question my motives. They know that my motives are pure, if not tiring. And Ed is my brother from another mother when it comes to
Yeah.
that.
That
He
needs
will
to be
not
a Peach
tire.
Pundit T-shirt, I think, Scott.
Yeah, pure motos are pure, but tiring.
Pure,
Yes.
but tiring. Yes.
Yes. I might, yeah, I might have to. But he brought it back. He got out of the Senate again. It's in Judiciary, and then Deborah Silcox joined with the Democrats to vote against it. They reconsidered and tabled it, and so it's just sitting there now.
Yeah.
The faith community is going nuts. They're sending out emails saying, "Contact your legislator." It doesn't do anything for me to do that. My legislators not in House Judiciary, nor would she be really influential in this at all. I'm sure she'd vote for it. But RFRA is really a misunderstood measure, isn't it?
Yeah, and I talked with Senator Setzler a couple weeks ago about this. His position has been always, all the way back to what year was that, Scott? When
it was 13,
2013,
14.
Yes,
it's 2014 because it was the year that we had the big snowpocalypse.
Yes, even at that time, then Representative Setzler had a bill that simply incorporated federal RFRA into state law.
Right.
And at that time, it was just like a one-line bill that said, federal code such and such is incorporated into Georgia law. And I have always, just quite frankly, no disrespect to any of our friends who have ever been pretty consistent on this. To me, that's the way to go, because all the aspects of that law, federal RFRA, have been tested in court, have been fought over, have been battled for decades now. We know what it does and what it doesn't do.
Right.
And it does the things that all of us who want a state level RFRA want it to do, and it doesn't do the things the critics say it does.
So the critics
restrains the government from imposing itself upon religious institutions.
Well, and even then, it still can. So RFRA is a balancing test. It says that in order for the state to impose on your right to express or exercise your religion, they must have a compelling state interest. That's it. Compelling state interest. This, by the way, is federal law. It is state law in 39 other states.
Yeah.
If you are going to think, oh, if Georgia passes this, I'll move to somewhere else, you're only going to have 10 options, right?
Yeah, you're having a hard time finding a non-RFRA state anymore.
Right, and the biggest point for the critics who think that this is really about gay marriage or what have you, it's not. It's never been used successfully anywhere in a court to justify discrimination of any kind, not racial discrimination, not based on gender, not based upon sexual orientation. It's never been used that way in the 39 other states or federally. Right. So why it continues to be caught up in this narrative that this is targeting the LGBTQ community, there are, and I'll admit to you, there are people who believe that, but that's not what it does, right? It doesn't afford them that type of protection. There was a lady in the committee hearing who gave testimony about having be a school counselor for LGBTQ students, and she filed a RFRA claim in federal court, and it was ruled against her because RFRA doesn't apply that way.
Yeah,
it doesn't apply that way. Does the state have a compelling? And there's all kinds of examples of where the state might. The best example for me is Sam Teasley told this story about there's some faiths where after death you cannot disturb the body.
Right.
It's against, right? And there are some jurisdictions that might have a mandatory autopsy where they're cutting the body open to see what caused death was. Well, the compelling state interest balancing test would say if somebody died of natural causes, there's no need for an autopsy. So that the individual's right of religion and how they exercise that trumps the government's interest here.
Yes.
But if that person was murdered and they needed to determine if they were poisoned or they were shot or whatever the case may be, strangled, the autopsy would have to be performed because even against the religious beliefs of the individual because there's a compelling interest for the state to
Yeah.
prosecute a murder, and they need to
Exactly.
gather the evidence.
Yeah.
So that's how that works. And
Right.
so misunderstood. The
So
media
Setzler's
loves to
bill-
say it's about discrimination.
Yeah. Setzler's bill this time, all of the federal code is spelled out and incorporated into Georgia law. In the past, I mentioned he's just referenced, the federal code, and that was that's the approach he's taken this time. It's no different than what he's attempted to do in years past. So I hope that the House will change its mind and move it. So
Hey, we're getting an income tax cut.
yeah,
It passed
We
the
are.
Senate today. Congratulations to Sue Hong. This was a governor's initiative. The existing state income tax is currently 5.39%. Were you there when we voted to cut it for the first time?
No, I was
So
gone.
I got to vote for the first income tax cut in Georgia history. That was exciting. But we reduced the income tax from 5.39% to 5.19, starting January 1st of this year. So it's retroactive for this year, and allows a 0.1 reduction annually until it reaches 4.99%, contingent upon revenue growth benchmarks. So if we end up losing too much money, that wouldn't kick in. But what we have found is the bell curve is real. The Laffer curve is a real thing. And if you cut income tax to a certain amount, you find that sweet spot where your revenue actually goes up.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yes.
That's what the bill does. And
keep it up, man. I chatted with a fellow government affairs guy in Mississippi. They just passed a bill that will starts the process. Well, there's two pieces of legislation floating around that would make a flat tax at 4.4%, and another one that will, over time, eliminate their income tax and replace it with a sales tax. So the pressure is on. Another state could be joining the zero income tax.
Don't tell Senator Beach there's yet another SEC state.
Exactly. Ole Miss. Man, Lane Kiffin's going to be eating that up and recruiting the heck out of that. So
yeah. Well, we could be doing the same thing here for
help
everybody.
Kirby Smart.
Yeah.
Yes, by eliminating the income tax.
Yeah, I'm all about using UGA football as the driver getting away from the income tax. Fonnie Willis, our favorite punching bag here. I don't know. Is she the favorite punching bag, or is the Alabama cheerleader? Colton Moore.
We have a long list, Scott. We have a long. Yes,
she's on the short list. Fonnie Willis is on the short list of our favorite punching bags.
Yes,
and she was
more. So we have some males on there too, not just
definitely
crazy
Colton
ladies.
Moore. The aforementioned senator whose name I won't repeat because he gets me in trouble apparently every time. But we talked about Ashley Merchant last year. She's one of the attorneys one of the defendants in this Trump case, the stolen election claims. And we've been talking for a long time about how arrogant Fonnie Willis is, how she goes about her business in a way that is so obviously corrupt. I'm not going to mince words. She gave her boyfriend $1 million out of her civil asset forfeiture funds. It's just going after Burt Jones the way that she did, going after Sean Still the way that she is. Just obviously corrupt. Corrupt. But she refused to comply with open records request, and a judge fined her $54,000.
Yeah.
Do you think that
Scott? I love this. I love the language. It's almost Jackie Childs-esque here. If you're Seinfeld fans, Judge Rachel Krause found that the failures to comply with the records law were intentional, not done in good faith, and substantially groundless and vexatious.
Vexatious. I
love it.
I saw a candle at the state capitol recently in a state senator's office. It was the odor of mendacity candle.
Oh, how did it smell? Was it lit? Do we know?
Like vanilla. I mean,
okay. Yeah. At least you didn't say like chicken, like all these other weird meats taste like chicken. But
no, but how many times has Fonnie Willis I mean, how many judges have to slap her around before she gets the hint, right? Because she goes out and she holds this press conference. I'm the victim here. I'm the victim.
Yeah.
These people don't know the
That's
law.
right.
How many
That's the
times?
problem, right? That's the problem. Just like on the right, in certain elements of the right, the more you fail, the bigger deal, the bigger hero you are. And that's happens on the left too with Fonnie Willis. The more she does this, it just helps her. She'll be DA for life. Unfortunately,
I don't. You're running out of judges, though. You've got to be
Right.
running out of judges that haven't admonished you in some way. How can you effectively go into court to argue any type of prosecution when all these judges are looking at you with a great deal of skepticism from the moment your people show up in the courtroom?
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's just
conservative talk show host Shelley Winter had a rant this week on his evening talk show where he went off on the Georgia Republican Assembly. This weekend, the counties will be meeting, the county Republican parties around the state will be meeting to host their conventions where they will elect their leadership at their local level for the next couple of years. And Shelley had some really strong opinions. And he said that if a candidate is endorsed by the GRA, that lovable group of goofballs, rejects, and a-holes, sorry, Miss Laura, that you should vote for the other person, regardless of where you live.
Yeah.
And that the GRA is not interested in advancing Republicans or Republican candidates, but only serving their own little weird needs.
Yeah.
Look, we've been saying it here for a while, but it's kind of cool to hear somebody like Shelley Winter be like, guys.
Yeah.
Like,
well, Shelley is a guy who's all about growing the party.
Yeah.
About reaching into, building upon past successes and bringing more people to the cause. That's what Shelley tries to do on his show all the time. So when you have a little group like the GRA that wants to keep the fishbowl small so that they could be the big fish, that Shelley's not down with that. So good for him, man. This is good, and I hope folks listen to him.
Yeah, he went so far as to be like, hey, the GRA has nominated somebody against Marcy McCarthy in DeKalb County. Like, why?
As if Marcy McCarthy is some sort of squishy rhino. I mean, she's not one of us. I mean,
I don't get it. I don't get it. Like they're all eating their own right now.
The purity test. Once you go down the road of purity tests, you see this on religious Twitter all the time too. They just all day long ripping other people because they're not pure enough, and that's what's happening here. There's nobody is pure enough.
Right.
The search for the perfect person continues, and they will not find them.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's really strange because the Alabama cheerleader and I guess the Kramer mother-daughter team.
Oh man, they're
all
like
at war with each other.
A war. Now. I mean, it is.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not a delegate this year. Did you?
No, me either. No,
this
I didn't.
Is the first time I'm missing, and since like maybe 2004.
Yeah,
20 plus years. I'm not a delegate. To wrap up, my friend Martin Moptahan, your friend Martin Moptahan, is king of the trolls. He's the king of the trolls. There is no doubt from now on, from this day forward, who the king of the trolls is. It is State Representative Martin Moptahan, Republican from Dallas, Georgia, who has introduced legislation to reclaim a section of Tennessee land that historical records show belongs to the state of Georgia. This is one of the very first measures I ever voted on. Harry Geisinger back in the day with Brad Carver.
That's right.
We're pushing this. We gotta be able to sue. We gotta be able to go straight to the U.S. Supreme Court because they handle these types of border disputes between states. They were on a show called How the States Got Their Shapes, where I think Brad Carver hit a golf ball into the river, saying that's this is how far away it needs to be. It's important because of access to the Tennessee River.
Yeah, that's all we need. We just need a straw in that Tennessee River so we can suck water out, and we're all good.
Right. But Martin Moptahan, this is what this guy decides to do a television interview with a news station in Tennessee, and he gets a poster and he hangs it
Yes.
behind him
I'm looking at it
of
on his
all
Twitter
of the Georgia
feed.
versus Tennessee football scores going back to 2017. And it's 2017, 41-0, 2018, 38-10, 2019, 43-14. You get it. They haven't lost
Yes.
in ages, like a
Yeah.
decade. And so he's doing this interview, and this poster is prominently displayed over his right shoulder. He trolled the entire state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Those folks up there ran that piece with that interview with him at 4 o'clock, at 5 o'clock, at 6 o'clock, and 11 o'clock.
It's, man, the problem is now those volunteer fans, they're a wild bunch, man. They already know how to navigate a river, so they're going to float down and just who knows what they'll do. I mean, it's
so
man.
I spoke with Representative Momtahan this afternoon, and he said he did get some death threats from volunteer fans.
Of course. So, and I was wrong. It wasn't on what I'm looking at. The one the tweet you sent, Scott, it's Georgia House GOP, so it's the official Georgia House Republicans Twitter account, and they tag volunteer football in this.
Yes,
tweet,
they did. So. They did. They tagged Georgia football, and then Brian Robinson down there in the replies.
So they're facilitating the tweet. They're facilitating the troll here.
Yeah, Brian Robinson down there in the replies tagged 3-year Letterman. Can't wait to see what 3-year Letterman does with this.
Yes. Start a debate on how many SEC championships. I need to check. Georgia Tech still has more SEC championships than half the SEC. See if Tennessee's
if I
on
was
that
here,
list.
he'd be going bonkers.
It's true. Tulane does too.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show. Thanks for bearing with us through the technical difficulties. Hopefully, in the edit, all of it's clean.
Yeah.
I'm going to test my edit skills tonight.
Might be a little disjointed. Who knows?
I'm going to hope that
just
this gets out
the
by Friday morning.
The takeaway is that Scott knows that the Georgia Supreme Court justices are smarter than him.
Yes,
so.
that no doubt. I want to be more like them. I really do.
Yes.
I'm not saying
Good
that
group of
because I hope
folks,
that
man.
they rule in my favor. I don't think they listen to the podcast, but just in case they do, it was a humbling experience. The people who rock are the people who reach into their pockets every single month and give us just a few bucks to keep us going. You can join them at patreon.com/Peach Pundit. Sign up for one of those tiers, just starting at $5. At the $10 level, unless Buzz's power goes out, you can watch us live.
Yeah.
And you also get an email every week from us telling you what we're going to talk about in advance with all the links. And you can participate in the chat. Head on over to patreon.com/Peach Pundit and sign up for one of those tiers, and we'll add you to this list of people who rock. They are Sam Thomas, Jordan Reed, Shannon Ferguson, Jeff Cobble, Hank Burnham, Ryan Purvis, James Hall, Colin Martin, Tony West and our friends at Americans for Prosperity, Robert Lee and our friends at Lee 6 Media, Stuart Wilkinson, Ron Daniels, Mike Buchert, our anonymous contributor and our friends at ALZ, Bo Brannon, Ryan Graham, John Vestal, Reed Powell, Brett Harrell, and our friends at Conservatives Concerned. Thank you for listening. Peach Pundit Podcast is me, Scott Turner, Buzz Brockway, and Jason Pye. All the music you hear is original. Well, except for that 3-second clip I played of a song earlier by Jason Pye. And it is owned and published by me, Scott Turner. Catch us next time. Share, like, subscribe, do all those things. Helps us. It helps us a lot. Leave comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a comment. Let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what we're doing wrong. We may not respond, but we appreciate it. Catch you next time.
Go Jackets.